Father in heaven, hallowed be your name.
Our Father,
Our Father in heaven,
hallowed be your name.
The Lord's Prayer, a journey through its power and meaning. Close your eyes for a moment and let the world around you fade. Imagine yourself seated on a quiet hillside, the soft rustle of olive leaves carried on a gentle breeze. Picture yourself in that ancient crowd, hearing Jesus' voice for the first time as he says, "This is how you should pray." We'll explore each phrase not just as words, but as a way of life, unpacking their historical context, their spiritual weight, and their relevance to you today. Whether you're seeking understanding, peace, or simply a moment of rest, let this journey guide you into the heart of the prayer Jesus gave us. By the end, you'll never pray it the same way again. So, breathe deeply, and let's begin. The air is warm, tinged with the earthy scent of sun-baked soil. It's here, in a moment much like this, that Jesus gathered his disciples and taught them to pray with empty words, but with a blueprint for connecting to the divine. Welcome to Mr. N Bible, where tonight we embark on a 2-hour journey through the Lord's Prayer. A prayer so familiar yet so profound that its depths are often overlooked. This is not just a recitation. It's a strategy, a lifeline, a declaration of faith that has shaped lives for centuries. As you settle in, let the stresses of the day slip away. The world of first-century Judea. Envision yourself transported back in time, traversing the ancient, sun-baked trails of first-century Judea, the very land where the Lord's Prayer first resonated through the air. Feel the intensity of the sun as it blazes down upon your shoulders, its warmth permeating your very being. Listen closely, and you'll perceive the subtle yet persistent hum of daily existence, a symphony of sounds that defines this era. The temple in Jerusalem, a gleaming structure of white stone, was the center of worship, where priests offered sacrifices and the faithful gathered for festivals like Passover. Taxes were crushing, often forcing families to sell land or indenture themselves to survive. The Lord's Prayer was in tea, given in a vacuum. It was spoken to people who knew hunger, fear, and oppression, yet clung to faith. When Jesus said, "Our Father," he was inviting them, you into a relationship that transcended their daily struggles. When he said, "Give us this day our daily bread," he was speaking to hearts that knew what it meant to pray for enough to eat. This prayer was their lifeline, a way to align their lives with God's kingdom in a world that often felt far from it. Disease was a constant shadow. Leprosy, fevers, and infections claimed lives without warning, and medicine was little more than herbs and prayers. The consequences of rebellion were severe. Crosses dotted the hillsides, a grim reminder of Rome's power. Still, the people held fast to hope, believing in a Messiah who would deliver them, not just from Rome, but from all that bound them. But daily spirituality happened in homes and synagogues, where prayers were recited 3 times a day, and the Torah was studied with reverence. The rhythm of their lives was marked by the Sabbath, a day of rest that reminded them of God. Scavenanta, pause in the struggle to trust in divine provision. Observe the patient donkeys as they make their steady progress along the well-worn paths, their hooves stirring up miniature clouds of fine, dry earth with each deliberate step. The bustling marketplace comes alive with a vibrant chorus of merchants, their voices rising and falling in a captivating chorus as they seek to attract customers to their stalls. These vocal exchanges blend seamlessly with the reassuring clink of coins changing hands and the lively chatter of bartering. As people negotiate and exchange goods, the call of a rooster at dawn, the laughter of children playing in a courtyard, the murmured prayers of a family gathered around a flickering oil lamp. This was their reality, and it's where the Lord's Prayer took root. As we move forward, we'll see how this prayer was not just words, but a radical call to live differently in a world of struggle and hope. Allow your senses to be further captivated by the enticing aroma of freshly baked bread emanating from a nearby oven, its yeasty fragrance mingling with the sharp, distinctive tang of olives and the subtle, earthy musk of livestock. This sensory tapestry paints a vivid picture of the world that Jesus himself inhabited, a world where his profound words took root and flourished among ordinary people whose lives were inextricably shaped by unwavering faith, persistent struggle, and the unwavering support of their close-knit community. It was within this very environment, steeped in tradition and the realities of everyday life, that his teachings resonated so deeply, offering hope and guidance to those who sought solace and meaning. In this time, life in Judea was a delicate balance of survival and devotion. Most people were farmers, fishermen, or craftsmen, rising with the dawn to tend fields or cast nets into the Sea of Galilee. The land was harsh rocky hills, and unpredictable rains made every harvest a gamble. Families lived in modest homes of stone or mud brick, often sharing a single room where they ate, worked, and slept. Meals were simple: flatbread, lentils, fish, and occasionally a bit of cheese or fruit. Water was drawn from wells or cisterns, a task that fell to women who carried heavy jars balanced on their heads, their sandals slapping against the packed earth. Religion was the heartbeat of this world. The Jewish people lived under Roman occupation, their lives governed by foreign laws and taxes, yet their faith anchored them. Yet, life was not without hardship. Roman soldiers patrolled the streets, their armor glinting as they enforced order with an iron hand. As you walk these streets in your mind, imagine the weight of this world on the shoulders of those who heard Jesus speak. Feel the rhythm of their lives as you picture yourself among them. The life and ministry of Jesus. Imagine yourself nestled on a gentle, ardent hillside, overlooking the tranquil expanse of the Sea of Galilee. The water stretches out before you, an endless shimmer of blue reflecting the brilliant midday sun, its surface dancing with light. A multitude surrounds you, a diverse gathering of people drawn together by a shared anticipation, and joined his family for the Sabbath meal, where the glow of oil lamps cast shadows on the walls. He emerged to a voice from heaven, "This is my beloved Son." From that moment, he stepped into a life of teaching, healing, and calling people to a new way of living. Imagine Jesus looking out over the crowd, their faces a mix of hope and hardship, and saying, "When you pray, pray like this." The words were not abstract theology. They were a lifeline for people living under Roman rule, people who knew what it meant to need daily bread, to seek forgiveness, to face temptation. It represented a genuine invitation, an open door beckoning each of us to emulate his way of life, to adopt his perspective, and to cultivate the same unwavering faith that sustained him. It was an invitation to walk in his footsteps, embracing the principles and values that shaped his interactions with the world. It was also an invitation to trust in the same divine guidance that he so readily embraced, surrendering our anxieties and uncertainties to a higher power. Jesus didn't just teach the prayer, he lived it. When he prayed, "Father, your will be done," he meant it, even when it led him to the cross. Picture him in Gethsemane, sweat mingling with tears, surrendering to a path of suffering for the sake of love. He walked the roads of Galilee, his sandals dusty, his robe plain, speaking to crowds that gathered in fields, synagogues, and village squares. Allow yourself to truly feel the cadence of his existence, the deliberate pace and unwavering commitment that defined his earthly journey. Each day held a specific aim, a clear sense of direction that guided his actions. Every word he spoke was carefully considered, imbued with meaning and purpose, reflecting the depth of his understanding and compassion. And above all, his heart remained steadfastly oriented toward the Father, a beacon of unwavering devotion and trust. His message was simple, yet revolutionary. The kingdom of God is at hand. Imagine the hope in the eyes of those who heard him, fishermen mending nets, women drawing water, tax collectors weary of scorn. We will uncover how it served as a guiding light for his followers, offering them solace, strength, and a clear path forward amidst the trials and tribulations they faced. And, importantly, we will discover how this timeless prayer continues to resonate today, offering you the modern Sikra pathway toward a more profound and meaningful connection with God. A relationship built on trust, understanding, and unwavering faith. It's a roadmap for navigating the complexities of life with grace and purpose, just as Jesus did. He spoke of a kingdom not of power, but of love, not of conquest, but of surrender. The rhythm of their lives revolved around faith trips to Jerusalem for Passover, gatherings at the synagogue, and the constant hope for the Messiah. Yet, even as a child, Jesus showed a depth beyond his years. At 12, he lingered in the temple, discussing scripture with scholars, his questions piercing and his wisdom astonishing. Picture him there, a boy among men, his eyes bright with understanding, already sensing the weight of his purpose. Their faces, tanned and lined by the relentless sun and the passage of time, reveal a tapestry of stories and experiences. Each face is etched with a deep curiosity, a palpable sense of wonder as they focus their attention on the figure at the center of the gathering. He healed the sick, blind eyes opened, lame legs strengthened. Lepers cleansed. Each miracle a glimpse of the kingdom he proclaimed. Picture a mother's tears as her child is restored, or the gratitude of a man who could see the sky for the first time. Yet, his life was not without struggle. He faced rejection from religious leaders who saw his teachings as a threat. He knew hunger, exhaustion, and the weight of expectation. Yet, he never wavered. In the wilderness, tempted by Satan, he stood firm, his voice steady as he quoted scripture to resist. There, standing tall and serene, is Jesus. His presence commands respect, yet radiates an aura of gentle compassion. His voice, though steady and measured, possesses a remarkable warmth that resonates with everyone present, carrying easily over the soft murmurs and rustling sounds of the crowd. His words, clear and distinct, capture their undivided attention. This is the man who gifted humanity with the profound and timeless Lord's Prayer, a prayer that has echoed through generations. To truly grasp the power and depth of this prayer, to unlock its full meaning and significance, we must embark on a journey. We must immerse ourselves in his world, understanding the context in which he lived and taught. We must explore his life, tracing the events and experiences that shaped his perspective and influenced his teachings. And, perhaps most importantly, we must delve into the very mission that drove him, the purpose that fueled his actions, and ultimately shaped the very words he chose to share with the world. Let the gentle rhythm of his life, the cadence of his days, draw you in, beckoning you closer to understanding. As we embark on this exploration, we will trace the steps of the one who so graciously taught us how to pray, offering us a roadmap to connect with the divine and express our deepest hopes and desires. Jesus was born in Bethlehem, a small village south of Jerusalem, under humble circumstances. His cradle was a manger, a feeding trough for animals, surrounded by the faint scent of straw and the soft lowing of livestock. His parents, Mary and Joseph, were ordinary people. Mary, a young woman of deep faith. Joseph, a carpenter whose hands were calloused from shaping wood. They lived in Nazareth, a quiet town in Galilee, where Jesus grew up learning his father's trade. Imagine the sound of a saw rasping through timber, the faint dust of wood shavings settling on the floor of a modest workshop. This was his childhood, grounded in the simplicity of daily labor and the richness of Jewish tradition. As a boy, Jesus would have memorized Torah passages, recited prayers. When Jesus began his ministry at 30, everything changed. Baptized by John in the Jordan River, the waters cool against his skin. Jesus' days were filled with movement and meaning. He taught in parables, stories of seeds and shepherds that carried truths about God's heart. The Lord's Prayer was born in this context, given during the Sermon on the Mount. As recorded in Matthew 6, envision Jesus traversing the world, a figure of profound influence, imparting wisdom, offering solace through healing, and engaging in heartfelt prayer. The Lord's Prayer, often recited and perhaps sometimes taken for granted, was far more than a simple lesson or a set of instructions to be memorized. As we continue our exploration, we will delve deeper into the profound significance of this prayer, examining how it directly addressed the intricate mysteries and formidable challenges that characterize the world in which he lived and ministered. The spiritual depth of our Father. Picture yourself transported back in time, seated beside a warm, crackling fire within the humble walls of a first-century Judean dwelling. The comforting aromas of pressed olive oil and freshly baked bread gently permeate the air, creating a sense of simple peace. The Jewish people revered God as holy, majestic, the Creator whose name was so sacred it was rarely spoken. In Aramaic, the language Jesus spoke, the word for father was Abba, a term children used, akin to papa or daddy. It was personal, tender, a word spoken with trust. When Jesus said Our Father, he was inviting his followers into a relationship that was both comforting and radical. Imagine the warmth of a child climbing into a parent's lap, unafraid, knowing they are loved. As you pause and consider these very words, allow your mind to fully grasp the significance of addressing God as your Father. Truly feel the profound depth of being completely known, unconditionally loved, and personally invited into His divine presence. In a world that often feels overwhelmingly chaotic. A world where the demands of work, the anxieties of worry, or the sting of pain can so easily take over and dominate our thoughts and feelings. The simple yet powerful words, "Our Father," serve as a steadfast anchor, a constant and comforting reminder that you are never truly alone, never abandoned, never without hope. Let yourself rest deeply in the assurance of an intimate and eternal relationship, placing your complete trust in a Father who sees you, not as a mere servant or an obligation, but as a cherished and beloved child, precious in His sight. This deeply personal and transformative relationship fundamentally shapes the very essence and understanding of the subsequent phrase within the prayer, gently calling us to honor the one whom we so intimately and confidently call Father. It is a call to reverence, to respect, and to acknowledge the immeasurable gift of His paternal love. That's the image Jesus evoked: God who listens, who cares, who welcomes His children. For a people burdened by Roman oppression and religious legalism, this was a lifeline. It meant that God was not just above them, but with them in the dust and struggle of their daily lives. In the temple, priests approached Him with intricate rituals, and the high priest entered the Holy of Holies only once a year, trembling with awe. In a society divided by class-wealthy elites, struggling laborers, outcast lepers, this was a declaration of unity. God is Father, yes, but He is also the Creator, reigning over all. Imagine looking up at the night sky, stars stretching endlessly, and realizing that the one who made it all calls you His child. This balance, intimacy, and majesty shaped the prayer's power. It reminded the people that their Father was not limited by their circumstances. Roman soldiers might patrol the streets, taxes might crush their hopes, but their Father in heaven held authority over all. This was a quiet rebellion, a way to find peace amid chaos, to trust in a God who was both near and sovereign. Picture a tax collector standing beside a fisherman, a woman beside a rabbi, all invited to call God their Father. This prayer broke down barriers, creating a family where all were equal before God. The rhythm of their lives, so often marked by division and hardship, was now woven into a shared identity as God's children. Imagine the weight of that reverence. The air thick with incense, the sound of chants echoing off stone walls, the sense that God was mighty, distant, unapproachable. Yet, Jesus begins His prayer with Our Father, a term so intimate it must have startled His listeners. Many had earthly fathers who were absent, harsh, or burdened by the same struggles they faced. To call God Father meant reimagining what that word could mean: a parent who never fails, who provides, who loves without condition. Picture a woman whose father had abandoned her, or a man whose father toiled under Roman taxes. Hearing these words and feeling a spark of hope, Jesus was offering them a new lens. God as the perfect Father whose care transcended human flaws. Picture their faces, fishermen, farmers, mothers' eyes widening as they heard God described not as a distant king, but as a loving parent. Above, the night sky unfolds, a breathtaking canvas of brilliant stars, silently whispering of the universe's infinite expanse and the boundless nature of creation itself. Within this tranquil setting, as the firelight dances and shadows play, you are drawn into a moment of profound intimacy. The hushed words, "Our Father," reach your ears, spoken with a reverence that suggests a hidden depth, a secret truth waiting to be uncovered. These two simple words, the very opening of the Lord's Prayer, transcend the ordinary bounds of a mere greeting. They represent something far greater, profound mystery, a transformative revelation that has the power to radically reshape your understanding of God and, indeed, your understanding of yourself, unraveling the layers of meaning embedded within. We will seek to understand the hidden power it possessed for those who first encountered its life-altering message, and consider the enduring relevance it holds for you in this very moment today. Let us delve into the significance of addressing the divine as our Father, and unlock the wisdom contained within this timeless prayer. In the world of Jesus' time, calling God Father was revolutionary. This wasn't a casual choice. Jesus didn't say "my Father," but "our Father," a collective call that bound his listeners together. And then Jesus adds, "in heaven." These words ground the intimacy in awe. For those first listeners, our Father was also a challenge. The echoes of this profound mystery continue to resonate in our lives, even now. Hallowing God's name in a world of competing loyalties. Picture yourself standing in a bustling first-century marketplace in Jerusalem. The air thick with the scent of spices and the clamor of voices haggling over goods. The temple looms in the distance, its white stones gleaming under the sun, a symbol of God's presence among his people. God's name, YHWH, the sacred "I am revealed to Moses," was so holy that many Jews avoided speaking it, using titles like Lord instead. Scribes, when copying scriptures, would pause, wash their hands, and use a fresh pen to write God's name. Such was their reverence. He was asking his followers to live in a way that reflected God's holiness. Saying, "Hallowed be your name," was a defiance of Rome's claims, a rejection of pagan gods, and a challenge to religious hypocrisy. It was a reminder that God's name, his character, his authority was above every emperor, every idol, every human system. Picture the courage it took to pray this in a synagogue, knowing Roman soldiers might be nearby, or in a home where neighbors might report you. Yet, it was also a source of peace, a way to anchor the heart in God's unchanging nature amid a world of shifting loyalties. Imagine a fisherman mending his nets by the Sea of Galilee, whispering this prayer as he worked. To hallow God's name meant more than words, meant integrity in his dealings, kindness to his neighbors, trust in God despite a poor catch. For a woman baking bread in her courtyard, it meant teaching her children to fear God, not Rome. For a tax collector despised by his own people, it meant choosing honesty over greed, even at personal cost. The rhythm of their lives was to be shaped by this commitment, a daily choice to honor God in a world pulling them elsewhere. Imagine the care of their movements, the soft scratch of the pen on parchment, the quiet awe in their hearts. To say, "Hallowed be your name," was to declare God's holiness, to set him apart in a culture where other powers demanded worship. Imagine yourself pausing in the midst of your day, whether at a desk or in a quiet moment at home, and saying these words, "Hallowed be your name." What does it mean to honor God's name in your choices, your words, your priorities? It's a call to live with integrity, to reflect God's holiness in a world that often dismisses it. It's a reminder that your life can be a quiet testimony, a way to set God apart in a culture that pulls you in every direction. Yet, around you, Roman banners flutter, and statues of emperors stand in silent demand for loyalty. Their trials and tribulations, their moments of joy and sorrow, their daily existence, all these experiences bear a striking resemblance to the challenges you face in your own life. The bustling marketplace of today may seem vastly different from the marketplaces of antiquity, filled with different goods and different faces. However, the fundamental challenge that confronted them remains unchanged for us: to sanctify and honor God's name in a world saturated with competing allegiances and conflicting priorities. In a world that constantly vies for your attention and devotion, the call to hallow God's name persists. Looking ahead, as we continue our exploration of these concepts, we will delve into how this unwavering commitment to God's name naturally and inevitably leads us to the subsequent phrase, a heartfelt prayer entreating God's kingdom to powerfully break into that world, transforming it from within. More than that, we will see how it is also a prayer for God's kingdom to break into your world, your personal sphere of influence, your daily life, reshaping it according to His divine will and purpose. In this world of competing allegiances, Jesus taught His followers to pray, "Hallowed be your name." These words, simple yet profound, were a call to honor God above all else. Let's step into the cultural landscape of Judea, where this phrase carried a weight that challenged the rhythm of their lives and invited them to live differently. In first-century Judea, names held power. A name was more than a label. It was identity, authority, reputation. This was no small thing. The Roman Empire required loyalty to Caesar, often called a god, with temples and altars dedicated to his name. Refusing to honor him could mean exclusion, punishment, or death. Picture a Jewish merchant in a market, torn between paying taxes to Rome and tithing to the temple, his heart caught in the tension of divided loyalties. Pagan idols dotted the landscapes, statues of Jupiter, Venus, or local deities, vying for devotion. Even within Judaism, religious leaders like the Pharisees and Sadducees competed for influence, their rules and traditions sometimes overshadowing God Himself. Into this world, Jesus' words were a quiet but radical call. Honor God's name above all. To hallow means to make holy, to treat as sacred. This call resonates across time. Today, you live in a world not unlike Judea, where voices compete for your allegiance, culture, success, ideologies, even self. Consider the echoes of the past as you contemplate these ideas, allowing yourself to truly feel the resonance of those lives lived long ago. Praying for God's kingdom in a divided society. Picture yourself on the edge of a Galilean village. At sunset, golden light spills across barley fields and olive trees. Life pulses all around. Women draw water from the well. Children's laughter fills the air. Fishermen haul in their catch. But under the surface, tension brews. A tax collector gets icy glares. The Pharisees, zealous for the law, clashed with the Sadducees, who embraced Greek culture and controlled the temple. Zealots whispered of rebellion against Rome, while others, like tax collectors, collaborated with the occupiers, earning scorn. In heaven, there's no division, no oppression, no pride, only perfect unity under God's rule. Jesus modeled this. He ate with tax collectors, touched lepers, honored women, and welcomed children. Picture him at a table, breaking bread with sinners, showing what God's kingdom looked like in action. His followers were called to do the same, to bridge divides, to serve the outcast, to love their enemies. In a village where grudges festered and factions clashed, this was no small task. It required courage to pray for a kingdom that turned their world upside down. Jesus was calling his followers to align their lives with that vision. Imagine a tax collector, despised by his neighbors, praying this and choosing to act with integrity. The prayer for God's kingdom was a call to unity, a plea for transformation in a fractured world. As we move forward, we'll explore how this prayer sustained those who lived it, providing for their daily needs in a land of scarcity. Or a Pharisee humbled by these words, softening his judgment of others. The rhythm of their lives, so often dictated by survival or status, was meant to shift toward God's purpose that united rather than divided. Imagine a synagogue where these groups sat apart, their prayers laced with judgment rather than unity. Into this fractured world, Jesus' prayer was a radical call to seek God. Kingdom, where the first would be last. Where love trumped power, where divisions dissolved in the light of God's will. Divisions, political, economic, cultural, shape your society. Imagine yourself pausing in your day, whether in a quiet room or a busy street, and praying, "Your kingdom come." What does it mean to seek God's will in a world of conflict? It's a call to act with love where there's hate, to build bridges where there are walls, to choose humility over pride. The rhythm of your life, like theirs, can reflect God's kingdom, a kingdom that heals division and restores hope. A Roman soldier's armor flashes a stark sign of occupation. In this fractured world, Jesus taught his followers to pray, "Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven." That prayer wasn't passive, it was revolutionary. Travel back to first-century Judea to uncover its radical power. Judean society was a tapestry of divisions. At the top were the elite's wealthy landowners, priests, and Sadducees who held power and influence. They lived in stone houses with courtyards, their tables set with wine and meat, while most labored for daily survival. Picture a farmer, his hands rough from plowing, paying taxes to both Rome and the temple, his resentment simmering as he watched the elite pass in fine robes. Below them were the working, poor fishermen, carpenters, shepherds whose lives were a constant struggle to provide. Outcasts, like lepers or prostitutes, lived on the margins, shunned by society, yet longing for belonging. And over it all loomed Rome, its soldiers enforcing order, its taxes draining hope. Religious factions added another layer of division. When Jesus said, "Your kingdom come," he was asking his followers to pray for a reality that challenged their society's norms. God's kingdom wasn't about overthrowing Rome with swords, as the zealots hoped, but about transforming hearts. Picture a fisherman praying these words, longing for a world where his labor wasn't crushed by taxes, or a woman marginalized for her past, whispering this prayer, hoping for a kingdom where she was seen as a daughter of God. This prayer was a plea for justice, mercy, and reconciliation in a world that thrived on division. It was a quiet rebellion against systems that exalted power over people. To pray, "Your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven," was to surrender personal agendas for God as greater plan. This prayer also carried a social challenge. To pray for God's kingdom meant living it out. Today, you live in a world not so different. As you reflect on this, feel the weight of those ancient divisions and the hope of Jesus' words. The struggle for daily bread. Picture yourself rising with the dawn in ancient Judea, where cool morning air carries the earthy scent of dew-covered fields. Sunlight spills over stone walls as you step outside to begin a hard day's labor. Picture a farmer in his field, his hands gripping a wooden plow as he breaks the rocky soil, sweat beating on his brow. The rains were unpredictable, and a single drought could mean hunger for a family. When Jesus taught this prayer, his listeners knew what it meant to pray for enough to eat. Disease was common fevers, infections or blindness could strike without warning, and healers were scarce. In a culture where stockpiling grain or wealth offered a sense of security, Jesus asked his followers to rely on God day by day. Picture a fisherman, his nets empty after a long night, whispering this prayer, forcing faith over despair. For the poor, it was a reminder that God saw their need. For the wealthy, a challenge to share rather than hoard. The rhythm of their life's work, worry, hope was meant to be anchored in trust, not in their own strength. Imagine a mother praying over a sick child, her voice soft but urgent, trusting God for healing. Roman oppression added another layer of strain. Soldiers could demand goods or labor at any moment, and rebellion meant death. The prayer for daily bread was a lifeline then, and it is now, a reminder that God sustains you one day at a time. As we move forward, we'll explore how this trust leads to the next phrase, a plea for forgiveness that frees the heart from the burdens of the past. To pray for daily bread was to ask for sustenance of body, mind, and spirit to face each day's challenges with God's provision. Picture a father, his children gathered around a small table, their eyes hopeful as he broke a loaf to share. To pray, "Give us this day our daily bread," was to acknowledge their dependence on God. Not just for food, but for all they needed to live. Imagine yourself in a quiet moment, perhaps at the start of a busy day, praying these words. What do you need to face today? Strength for a challenge, peace for anxiety, provision for a need. This prayer invites you to release the illusion of control, to trust God for what you need right now, not tomorrow. It's a call to live in the present, to find peace, independence, just as those in Judea did. It echoed the story of the Israelites in the wilderness, where God provided manna each day, teaching them to trust Him one sunrise at a time. The soft rustle of manna falling, enough for the day, but no more, was a lesson in faith Jesus now recalled. Fishermen cast nets into the Sea of Galilee, their boats swaying in the wind, hoping for enough fish to feed their households and sell at market. The scent of salt and lake water clung to their clothes, a reminder of their dependence on each day's catch. The grinding of a millstone echoes nearby as a woman readies flour for the day's bread, the heart of every meal. In a world where survival teeters on every harvest, Jesus taught his followers to pray. Give us this day our daily bread. These weren't just words, they were a desperate lifeline of trust. Journey back now to feel the raw weight of this sacred plea. Life in Judea was a constant struggle for sustenance. Most people were farmers or fishermen, their days shaped by the rhythm of seasons and the mercy of the land. Bread was the heart of every meal, baked daily in communal ovens or small hearths. Imagine a woman kneading dough, her hands dusted with flour, the heat of the fire warming her face as she shapes flat loaves. A family's table might hold bread, lentils, a few olives, or a bit of dried fish. Luxuries like meat or fruit were rare for most. Water was carried from wells, a task that fell to women who balanced heavy jars on their shoulders, their steps steady despite the weight. Every morsel was hard-won, and the specter of scarcity loomed large. Taxes to Rome and tithes to the temple often took more than a family could spare, leaving some to borrow or sell land to survive. This was a world where daily bread was not a metaphor, it was a literal need. Yet, this prayer went beyond physical needs. In Judea, daily life was also a struggle for hope and strength. This prayer was also a call to trust. Today, you may not face the same scarcity, but the need for daily bread remains. As you reflect on their lives, their labor, their faith, their trust, feel the rhythm of their daily struggle. The contrast of wealth and power in Judea. Imagine standing before a lavish mansion in ancient Jerusalem's smooth stone walls gleaming, a courtyard rich with jasmine and silver coins softly clinking. Inside, a Roman official or wealthy Sadducee lounges, ripe figs and wine in elegant pottery. Servants glide across mosaic floors without a sound. This is Judea's privileged class, far removed from the dusty villages where most fought to survive. Yet even here, the Lord's Prayer, "Forgive us our debtors," delivered a radical message. Step inside their world to discover how Jesus' words pierced hearts and disrupted power. In a society where power was maintained by holding others in debt, forgiveness was counter-cultural. Picture a priest in the temple, his prayers formal and ritualistic, yet distant from the struggles of the poor. Picture yourself in a quiet moment of prayer, whispering these ancient words. What debts are you holding? Grudges, bitterness, unpaid emotional accounts. Like the elites of old, you may carry wealth, status, or influence. But when you say, "Forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors," you're choosing release over revenge, mercy over pride. It's a divine spotlight on your soul, revealing how power or ego may block the freedom God offers. Think of Judea's elite, their riches, their brokenness, their desperate need for grace. This prayer wasn't just protection, it was transformation, shielding hearts from temptation and shaping lives with heaven's mercy. Jesus' prayer invited them into a shared humanity, where all rich and poor stood equal before God, in need of forgiveness. The rhythm of their lives, so often driven by ambition, was meant to shift toward compassion, aligning with God's kingdom rather than Rome's. Imagine a wealthy landowner, his fields worked by tenants who could never repay their loans. To forgive those debts meant relinquishing control, sacrificing profit, and choosing mercy over power. Jesus' words echoed his parable of the unmerciful servant, where a man, forgiven a massive debt, refused to forgive a smaller one. For the elite, this prayer was a call to release their grip on others, to mirror the mercy they sought from God. In first-century Judea, the elite lived in a world apart. High priests, Sadducees, and wealthy landowners held sway, their homes adorned with imported fabrics and bronze lamps that cast a warm glow at night. Picture a Sadducee priest, his hands adorned with rings, offering sacrifices in the temple while Roman soldiers watched from the Antonia fortress. Collaboration with Rome brought wealth, but also scorn from the common people who saw them as traitors. Meanwhile, their religious authority was challenged by Pharisees, who criticized their lax observance of the law, and by zealots, who dreamed of rebellion. The rhythm of their lives was one of calculation. Every decision weighed against the risk of losing status or sparking unrest. Imagine the rustle of fine linen robes, the scent of myrrh lingering in the air, the murmur of deals struck over lavish dinners. Debts, in this context, meant more than money, encompassed sins, wrongs, and the burdens of guilt. For the elite, this prayer was a mirror. Their wealth often came from exploiting others, extorting taxes, seizing land from the poor, or enforcing harsh debts. Picture a tax collector in his fine robes, his ledger filled with names of those who owed more than they could pay. To pray, "Forgive us our debts," meant confronting their own failings, acknowledging that their wealth did not make them righteous before God. It was a humbling act, stripping away the illusion of self-sufficiency. These were the privileged few who controlled the temple, collected taxes, or served as intermediaries with Rome. Their tables groaned with abundance bread made from the finest wheat, pomegranate, and even rare spices from distant lands. Their lives were cushioned by wealth, yet not without tension. Power came with a price. The elite navigated a delicate balance, maintaining favor with Rome while appeasing their own people. Into this world, Jesus' prayer for forgiveness was a radical call. But the second part, as we forgive our debtors, was even more challenging. This prayer also spoke to their spiritual isolation. The elite, surrounded by wealth, often lived apart from the community that gathered in synagogues or shared simple meals. Today, this powerful phrase dares you to go deeper. The battle against temptation. Picture yourself walking a lonely road at dusk in ancient Judea's shadows stretching. The sky turning indigo, the heat of the day slipping away. Gravel crunches beneath your feet as a night bird cries in the distance. The air is thick with silence, charged with something sacred. Why ask God not to lead us into something He wouldn't do? The Jewish understanding of temptation, rooted in scriptures like Job or the wilderness wanderings, saw life's trials as tests of faith. In Judea, temptation often came through daily choices: to curse a Roman soldier, to hoard grain in a famine, to follow false messiahs promising freedom. Picture a young man, his heart burning with zeal, tempted to join the zealots' violent cause. Praying this phrase was a reminder to seek God's path, not his own. It was a call to stay alert, as Jesus later urged in Gethsemane. Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The rhythm of their lives' work, worship. Struggle was to be guarded by this prayer, a daily armor against spiritual attack. God didn't tempt with evil. James 1:13 makes that clear, but He allowed circumstances where choices were made. Imagine Him in the wilderness, hungry after 40 days, the stones around Him whispering of bread He could command. His victory came through prayer and scripture, a model for His disciples. This prayer was a shield then, and it is now, guarding you against the temptations that seek to pull you from God's path. As we move forward, we'll explore how this protection extends to deliverance from the forces of evil. A plea for God's power in the battles you face. Peter's failure, denying Jesus 3 times after boasting of his loyalty, showed what happened without this prayer. Yet, Jesus had prayed for him, as He told Peter in Luke 22-32, ensuring his faith would not fail. This prayer was a lifeline, a way to lean on God's strength before the battle began. Picture the Israelites in the desert, hungry and grumbling, tempted to distrust God's provision. Imagine yourself pausing in a moment of choice anger at a slight, the pull of distraction, the lure of comfort over duty. To pray, lead us not into temptation, is to ask for God's guidance to steer clear of those moments, to guard your mind and heart. It's a recognition that the battle is real, but so is God's power to guide you through it. The rhythm of your life, like theirs, can be anchored in this plea for protection. Trusting God to lead you away from the enemy's traps. Jesus himself faced temptation in the wilderness, where Satan offered power and glory. His response, quoting scripture, showed that temptation was a battle won through reliance on God. Suddenly, the words echo, "Lead us not into temptation." This haunting plea pulses with divine urgency. What did it mean back then? What does it mean now? Join us as we uncover the hidden power behind this ancient prayer. In Jesus' time, temptation was not an abstract idea, was a daily reality woven into the fabric of life. Picture a fisherman by the Sea of Galilee, his nets empty after a long day, tempted to despair or cheat to survive. Or a young woman in a village, her heart stirred by whispers of rebellion against Rome, tempted to hate rather than love. The word for temptation in Greek, parosmos, could mean both a test and a lure to sin. Imagine a tax collector, despised by his people, tempted to justify his greed as necessity. Or a Pharisee, proud of his piety, tempted to judge others rather than seek God's mercy. The enemy, as Jesus knew, was cunning, exploiting weaknesses, fear, anger, or desire to draw people away from God's path. To pray, "Lead us not into temptation," was to ask for guidance away from those moments of testing, for wisdom to avoid the snares set by the enemy. The Jewish people lived under constant pressure. Roman rule tempted some to compromise their faith, while others faced the lure of wealth, power, or survival through betrayal. The rhythm of their lives was a struggle not just for bread, but for faithfulness in a world that pulled them away from God. The mystery of this phrase lies in its wording. Lead us not into temptation. When Jesus taught this prayer, he was addressing a spiritual reality his listeners knew well. This prayer was a shield, a proactive plea for protection. For Jesus' followers, this was also personal. He modeled it in his own life, facing temptation yet remaining sinless. Today, you face your own temptations, perhaps not in a Judean village, but in the quiet of your heart. As you reflect on this mystery, feel the weight of those ancient struggles and the hope of Jesus' words. Deliverance and the spiritual battle. Picture yourself at the edge of the Red Sea, salty wind whipping your face, and the thunder of chariots shaking the earth. This isn't first-century Judea, but a pivotal scene etched in Israel's soul when God split the sea and rescued his people from Pharaoh's grip. Archaeological finds, like the Dead Sea Scrolls discovered in the caves of Qumran, reveal how deeply the Jewish people clung to God's past acts of salvation. The fortress of Masada, its stone walls rising starkly against the desert sky, was a symbol of resistance against oppression, a place where Jews later sought refuge from Rome. The Greek word used here, paneros, could mean both moral evil and the evil one Satan. The people faced human threats, Roman soldiers whose presence was a constant reminder of subjugation, or bandits who roamed the hills preying on travelers. But they also believed in spiritual forces. Archaeological evidence, like amulets inscribed with protective prayers found in Judean homes, shows their fear of demons and curses. Picture a mother tucking such an amulet under her child's mat, whispering prayers for safety. This prayer was their shield. Now it as your summoning the power of the God who splits seas and stills storms. Ahead, we'll unveil how this prayer ends with a triumphant shout of divine authority, final echo of unstoppable victory. To pray deliver us from evil was to seek God's protection from both visible and invisible enemies. Ruins of synagogues like those at Capernaum show spaces where people gathered to pray and hear scriptures about God's power to save. He cast out demons, as in the story of the Gerasene man, whose cries echoed across the hills until Jesus freed him. Imagine the crowd watching, their whispers hushed, as a man tormented by spirits was restored, his eyes clear and calm. Imagine yourself in a quiet moment, the world's chaos, pressing, or spiritual struggle. To pray, deliver us from evil, is to acknowledge the battles you face, seen and unseen, and to trust in God's power to rescue. The archaeological echoes of Judea's faith, the scrolls, the synagogues, the amulets remind you that this plea has sustained God's people for centuries. It's a call to lean into divine strength, to seek protection in a world where evil still prowls. Jesus' acts of healing and exorcism were signs of God's power to deliver, not just from sickness, but from the forces that bound the soul. When he taught this prayer, he was inviting his followers to call on God's power in their own battles against fear, oppression, or the temptations that threaten their faith. Imagine sitting on a stone bench in such a synagogue, the cool air heavy with the scent of dust. Picture a fisherman on the Sea of Galilee, his boat rocking in a sudden storm, praying these words as he gripped the oars. Or a widow in her small home, the oil lamp flickering, asking for protection from illness or despair. The rhythm of their life's labor, prayer. Survival was undergirded by this plea for deliverance, a cry for God to intervene where human strength fell short. It was a reminder of God's promise in Psalm 52:15. Call on me in the day of trouble. I will deliver you. And Parchman, hearing the story of the Exodus or Daniel in the lion's den. These were not just tales, they were reminders that God delivered his people from evil. Whether it was Pharaoh's army or Babylonian exile, these scrolls carefully preserved in clay jars, contain prayers and psalms that echo the cry for deliverance from enemies, both human and spiritual. Picture a scribe in a desert community, his fingers stained with ink, copying Psalm 91. He will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. This was the spiritual heritage Jesus' listeners carried, a belief that God could rescue them from any threat. The roar of waves and gasps of deliverance still echo in ancient memory. When Jesus taught, "Deliver us from evil," he invoked this epic moment of divine salvation, real to his followers facing evil seen and unseen. Now, journey with us through archaeology and history to uncover the raw spiritual force behind one of the most powerful prayers ever spoken. In first-century Judea, the idea of deliverance was not abstracted, was rooted in stories carved into the land and the people as faith. The landscape of Judea itself told stories of deliverance. In Jesus' time, evil was a tangible reality. Jesus' ministry reinforced this plea. This prayer was a declaration of trust in a world of danger. For you today, this prayer is no less vital. As you absorb this timeless cry, feel the heartbeat of faith that anchored their survival, declaring God's sovereignty in a world of chaos. Picture yourself atop a twilight hill, gazing over Jerusalem as its white stones glow beneath the dimming sky. The hush of evening prayers drifts upward, mingling with olive wood smoke and the echo of carts on ancient stones. Imagine a merchant passing such a statue, his heart torn between fear of Rome's power and faith in God's promises. The culture exalted strength, Roman legions, wealthy elites, even religious leaders who wielded influence through rigid traditions. Yet, this world was chaotic. Revolts simmered, taxes crushed, and false messiahs promised deliverance that never came. Picture a family huddled in their home, the threat of Roman patrols outside, praying these words as a shield. They echoed King Jehoshaphat in 2 Chronicles 20, who faced an overwhelming enemy but declared God's sovereignty through worship and saw victory without lifting a sword. This prayer was a battle cry, not of violence, but a faith, a way to proclaim God's rule over every fear, every oppressor, every trial. The rhythm of their lives was shaped by uncertainty, where human powers seemed to reign supreme. Imagine yourself pausing in your day, whether in a quiet room or amid the noise of life. This declaration was their anchor, a way to end their prayer with confidence, not fear. It's your anchor to a call to trust in God's eternal rule. As we move to the conclusion, we'll weave these threads together, inviting you to pray the Lord's Prayer with new understanding and power, and saying these words: "For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever." What does it mean to declare God's sovereignty when anxiety, division, or uncertainty presses in? It is a call to shift your focus from the chaos around you to the one who reigns above it. It's a reminder that no matter what you face, loss, conflict, or fear, God's kingdom endures, His power sustains, and His glory outlasts all. In that sacred stillness, Jesus' final words thunder, "For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever." More than a farewell, let a bold proclamation, a spiritual revolt against chaos and earthly rule. Join us as we journey into first-century Judea and uncover the explosive cultural force behind this doxolasia. Timeless call to declare God as unstoppable reign. In Judea, the people lived under the shadow of Rome, where Caesar was hailed as a god, his statues towering in public squares, their bronze surfaces gleaming with imperial authority. Into this, Jesus' prayer ended with a bold claim: the true kingdom, power, and glory belonged to God alone. This doxology, though not in all ancient manuscripts, reflects Jewish prayer traditions, like the Kaddish, which praised God's name and kingdom. Picture a synagogue gathering, the air heavy with the scent of parchment and oil lamps, as voices united in affirming God's eternal rule. To pray, "Yours is the kingdom," was to reject Caesar's claim, to declare that no earthly power could rival God's. It was a quiet act of resistance, a reminder that Rome's might was temporary, but God's reign was forever. This declaration also reshaped the cultural mindset. In a society where status and wealth defined worth, Jesus' words lifted the lowly. Imagine a poor farmer, his hands cracked from labor, praying these words at dawn. They reminded him that his true home was God's kingdom, not Rome's empire. For a woman shunned as an outcast, it was a promise that God's glory outshone human judgment. For a priest, it was a call to humility, to recognize that his authority paled before God's. The rhythm of their lives marked by struggle, division, and fear was meant to be anchored in this truth: God's kingdom was unshakable, His power unmatched, His glory eternal. The cultural impact of this prayer was profound. It gave Jesus' followers a way to stand firm in a world of chaos. Today, you live in a world not so different, where powers, cultural, political, personal, vie for control. As you reflect on this, feel the rhythm of those ancient lives, their faith rising above the chaos of their world. As the stars blaze across the midnight sky above the ancient Judean hills, picture yourself once again seated on that sacred slope, where time stands still and eternity whispers in the wind. Feel the hush of the desert night as a gentle breeze carries the echo of Jesus' voice, the voice that spoke the very words of the Lord. Our Father invited them into a relationship of trust, a reminder that God was near, even in their hardships. Hallowed be your name called them to live with integrity in a world of competing loyalties. The prayer is not about changing God's mind, it's about changing you. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the words flow from your heart. May our lives honor you, reflecting your holiness in all we do. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. We surrender to your plan, trusting your rule over our lives and our world. Give us this day our daily bread. Provide what we need, today's strength, peace, provision, freeing us from tomorrow's worries. Forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. Cleanse us and help us release those who've wronged us, choosing mercy over bitterness. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Guide us away from sin's traps, and shield us with your power against the enemy's schemes. For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. You reign, unshakable, eternal, and we rest in your sovereignty. It's about surrendering your fears, your plans, your burdens, and stepping into a relationship where you are known and loved. Picture yourself praying it now, not as a ritual, but as a declaration. Let it shape your days, your choices, your heart. The world may be chaotic, but you are anchored in a Father who never fails. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, rest in the comfort of His presence, knowing you are part of His kingdom that endures forever. If this journey has stirred something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Check the resources in the description to deepen your faith. And let the Lord's Prayer guide you into a life of trust and peace. Sleep well, knowing your Father is watching over you. Imagine the peace of trusting God for today's needs, the freedom of releasing grudges, the strength of knowing He delivers you from evil. This prayer is your anchor, your shield, your battle cry, just as it was theirs. Your kingdom come was a plea for God's rule to break through their divisions, while give us this day our daily bread anchored them in trust for each day's needs. Forgive us our debts, challenge them to release bitterness, and lead us not into temptation, and deliver us from evil, shielded them in spiritual battles. Finally, yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory. Declared God's sovereignty over all. Each phrase was a step toward aligning their hearts with God's, a way to live differently in a world of struggle. But this is no ordinary prayer. It is a divine manifesto, a lifeline forged in the fire of oppression, hope, and unwavering faith. Imagine yourself now in the quiet of your own space, the hum of modern life fading as you reflect. The challenges of first-century Judeo-oppression, scarcity, division mirror your own in different forms. You may face pressures of work, fractured relationships, or the pull of a culture that exalts self over God. Yet, the Lord's Prayer offers you the same lifeline it gave them. It's an invitation to trust a Father who loves you, to honor Him in your choices, to seek His kingdom over your own, to rely on His provision, to forgive as you've been forgiven, and to stand firm against temptation and evil, knowing His power reigns supreme. It surged through the hearts of shepherds and kings alike, a battle cry in times of turmoil, a light in cultural darkness, and an anchor when the world was unraveling. Today, that same prayer reaches across centuries to meet you here right where you are. This is your moment to reclaim it, to let it awaken your soul, and to realign the rhythm of your life with heaven's heartbeat. Let's uncover its power, word by word, and discover how it can still shake the very ground you walk on. Picture those first-century listeners, fishermen, mothers, outcasts. Priests each hearing Jesus' words in the context of their daily lives. This prayer was never meant to be just words. It was a way of life, a strategy for navigating a world not unlike yours. As you let these words sink in, feel the rhythm of their lives blending with yours. So, let's pray it together with understanding and faith. Our Father in heaven, you are near, a loving parent who calls us your children. Hallowed be your name. As you open your eyes, carry this prayer with you. This powerful script ends here. Thanks for joining the journey into the Lord's Prayer. Got edits or requests? I'm ready, just say.